Very impressive, too.
It is impressive.
I have been a 50-year resident of Kern County, and I'm proud to call Bakersfield and Kern County my home. I'm a product of Kern High School District, West High Vikings, and Bakersfield College, and Cal State Bakersfield. I was a history major. I went into education when I was 24 years old. My parents raised me to be somebody who cares about my community. My father was a public defender, and he was standing up for people's rights in that role. My mother started out just as a lowly librarian out in Lamont, and when she discovered, for instance, that the buildings out at the Sunset Labor Camp, the original buildings from the days of the Grapes of Wrath, were scheduled to be demolished, she immediately went into action, and she got involved in the local Chamber of Commerce and the women's group, and she activated people, and today those buildings are a museum, and they're still there, and they're amazing. These are my role models. These are the people who raised me to be who I am, that you step up. And so after 30 years as an educator, I thought I was stepping up. I've always been proud to be with my students in my classroom throughout Bakersfield and Lamont. And I felt like I was stepping up for them and their education and their lives. And yet, when I saw that the incumbent for this race was running unopposed at the time, it really bothered me. And I actually talked to my students about it, in my government class. What do you think? This guy's running unopposed. And we had a whole conversation about how one of the things about democracy is that elected officials need to be held accountable for their actions. And it just didn't seem right that he would get a free seat and not have to answer. So they essentially convinced me to pull the papers, and so I didn't intend to be a candidate, but I'm delighted to be here, and I would like as much to step up for the folks of the 2nd District as much as I have for my students for the past 30 years.
Mr. Biglay, you mentioned in your introduction, introducing yourself to the room, that you mentioned Christian first. What do you mean by that, and what am I supposed to make of that, and what signal are you sending with that?
Well, I think a Christian is a person that helps people 7 days a week, not just on Sunday going to church. I was brought up in a Mexican family. My mother's full Mexican, born in New Mexico, my grandmother in Mexico. My name is Biglay, it's kind of Irish English, but my father's mother was born in Mexico. I don't know if you know, in a Mexican Hispanic family, you're very helpful to people. You always, if you bring somebody to your house, you always feed them. Nobody ever leaves your house hungry. Nobody ever leaves your house if they don't have a place to stay. So, my father was a lifelong Democrat. He was a printer, but he was the most conservative man I knew because he lived within his means. Most Hispanic Mexican families live within their means. They live a conservative life, but they help people. They help their neighbors, and that's the Christian part of it. So, like I say, the most conservative man I ever knew was my father, who was a Democrat. You've got to put yourself out there to help people. You have to care, and you have to go talk to people to find out what's bothering them and why they're having this problem. And you have to let them know that you share that problem. You're not living the high life while they're suffering. You're out there talking to them. You're out there trying to solve their problems. And we've been going out, 3 of us candidates, we've been talking to people. And we know some of these problems. We know some of the people in our district, a lot of the people in our district feel like they're forgotten. They're not being represented. So, I'm the guy that I like to sleep in, but if somebody calls me up and says they got a flat tire out on the 58, we're the first ones down there to help them. And people know that about us. So that's what I say is a Christian. It's not a person that's just on Sunday, practicing their religion.
Well, Michael, you sound to me like a Democrat.
I'm a confusing person.
Well, Michael, I appreciate, Richard, you pointing to that because your district is diverse. There, you have Sikhs, you have Catholic, you have folks who don't have a formal religion. and, you know, adhere to other forms of spiritual care. So how should those people think about that being, you know, your identifying factor in a very diverse district and an increasingly diverse district?
Well, it is diverse, but it got a little more diverse with this new redistricting. But there's a lot of Christian conservative people. Probably mostly Christian conservative. There's a lot of Hispanic people in this district. But the idea is if you're willing to help all of them, and you're not going to put your beliefs ahead of what they need, you know, they're going to welcome you. And they'll talk to you about what they need. And I have a background in construction. I have a background in roads. I have a background in stuff they need done. And we don't have the budget to do it, but we have manpower and equipment. And we've got knowledge. So I'll shake those guys out of that county yard to go fix those potholes. There won't be anybody sitting down there and not doing their job. And, you know, we'll work with Caltrans, we'll work with some of the other guys, and, you know, we have a big deal in Tehachapi. We have a big deal with that Tehachapi grade coming down to Bakersfield. We had a major accident here recently. You know, we need to do some things up there. We need to put some speed limit signs for the trucks going down some of the bigger grades. We need some passing lanes going up there, these trucks pull in front of you. The roads in Boron are terrible. We can do some work with those things with the budget we have because we already have the manpower. And I've done this in the parks. And, you know, when you try to do something like I've done with the parks, and I go to the guy and I tell him, you know, a solution for our recycling problem, we're paying a guy to come and do our recycling. He says, well, we don't have the budget to hire anybody. I says, but the recycling will hire him. He says, that'll create paperwork. And then that'll create more paperwork the following year, because we always got to show profit. He says, government is not made to save money, it's made to spend money. I don't believe that. I think we can save money. We're not going to make a profit, but you know, we can save some money and do some things with what we have.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Last question, we've run out of time just for Whitney. Whitney, we talk a lot about economic diversifying the economy. I mean, when you look at the district, what's doable and what's doable within a time frame that we might be able to realize it?
And a quick follow-up with that, if you could, you know, what do we need to change? What needs to be different, Whitney? Your thoughts?
Well, two things. First of all, I think when you're on the County Board of Supervisors, you do represent a district, but you make decisions for the whole county. And so, as Mr. Nacita said, you know, rising tide lifts all boats. If we can do good things for the county services that come out of those budgets ultimately go out to the people who live in District 2. And that's one of their biggest concerns is county services, law enforcement, fire, roads, animal control. Those are things they talk about that they just are ignored. The incumbent, they say, has laughed at them when they've gone to him for help, and they feel very left out, as Mr. Biglay said. These are, first of all, things that we can do if we make good decisions for the whole county. For instance, we could have and probably should have voted in the big concert venue that was suggested out by Buttonwillow.
Yes.
That was the next, you know, stagecoach place in California, a place that brings tourists and dollars and promotes the economy locally. That could have been really helpful. And frankly, we should also be something like Hollywood East. Our film commission is limited in what they're accomplishing, and we should be bringing in more film dollars and more Hollywood dollars that help our economy and promote Kern County also within those films. We're already starting out in District 2 with clean energy. We have wind and solar going on. We want to make sure that we continue to do that in environmentally and ways that are friendly to the residents who live there. Aerospace, of course, is taking off in Mojave, and we'd like to continue to do that. The vote on marijuana, which everybody wants to avoid talking about.
I'm not sure what vote you're talking about.
We do. We remember that.
It's so controversial. You know, we're probably not ready for like retail sales of marijuana in Kern County. We're just not. But we could do commercial growing of marijuana. They're trying this out in Cal City, and they're looking at it in Arvin. And these are things that commercial growing could be a real boon to our economy. And we could do the medical. I think that's important for people as well. And maybe we should even considering Mitch McConnell's recent comments about hemp. We're an agricultural county. We could grow hemp. And crops aren't as mysterious or frightening as we have in the past thought, I think they could be a big boon to our economy.
Yes.
Candidates here, let's get them going.
Very, very good. I would like to take a moment to recognize these councilman Alex Garcia.